And we're live. Hello again, everyone. We are at Monkey Week, at the professional conferences in the morning. As you all know, or you should know if you have switched on, we are going to be also live every evening and nights because it's going on until 2 a.m. from Seville, from a TV set from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m., but in the mornings from 11 a.m. until 1:30 a.m. p.m. Sorry, we're going to have these professional conferences. And for the second one, we have a very special guest because everyone here at Monkey Week is a big fan of a festival in Utrecht, Holland, called the Guess Who. And one of its founders and directors, Bob Van Heur, is with us. Hello, Bob.
Hello.
Welcome.
Meet you.
Um, you have almost finished the festival. It was this past weekend. What can you tell us about that? Where
The festival, we did, of course, because of Corona, an alternative version. So we had scheduled Guess Who On Off, which was like an online event, which turned out into be 64 hours of television, and the offline event, but that got cancelled 1.5 weeks ago because of new restrictions. But in that way, it was also meant to keep the local partners and the artists at work. So still can pay all those people. So it's sad that it didn't happen and that we didn't have a moment to hang out with everyone together. But it's also very nice for a year just to lay on the couch and watch television for 64 hours. So.
Well, that's more or less what we are going to do. We wanted to do a hybrid version as well, and we had shows with public, and that changed like 10 days ago or a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And so we had to switch to the TV show. We have a lot more than 64 hours though. It's going to be like 8 hours every afternoon, evening, just for 6 days, but then all the mornings. So yeah, it's probably
150.
Well, maybe it's 64 hours as well. Now I'm doing the math.
Yeah, we did 24 hours, like 3 days nonstop. So you start at 6 p.m. in the evening and it ends at Sunday.
Then it's probably similar.
Yeah.
But I won't be able to watch from the couch. I will have to maybe sleep on the couch at the TV set on camera. It's three of us presenting.
Yeah,
so, but yeah, we will have some of the shows will still be live. What we did was, instead of canceling those shows that were going to happen live in Seville, what we did was to introduce them in the broadcast, and they will play, but no one will be there. No public will be there to see them. Only our crew.
Yeah.
But they will play on our set, which is downstairs from where I am right now, in the Sala X, one of the venues in Seville. So let's talk about the start of Guess Who. I believe it's two partners. When did you have the idea, and how did you start?
Yeah, we officially started in 2007. I used to be a booking agent, full-time booking agent for a lot of bands. And my friend Johan and my partner in the festival, we grew up in the same town. So we knew each other for a long time, but we never really worked together in music once we worked professionally. And at some point we were like, oh, let's just do something together. So we started a club night first for 2 years. Before the festival, called Club Radar. We did that every month. And that kind of resulted in eventually, let's do a festival together. And at that point, we were really focused on a lot of Canadian bands, which were happening, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Wolf Parade, etc., etc. But we noticed here in the Netherlands and generally in Europe, a lot of people thought that there were American bands because there was no Canada in the music at that point. So we wanted to put a focus on that. But after a year of doing that, we quickly noticed like, okay, it's going to be a very narrow group of bands which we're actually interested in bringing to it. So it would become the same lineup over and over again. So in 2019, I would say we officially dismantled the idea of like being a festival focused on Canadian music. In 2008, we already had Beach House and Jana Hunter. We kind of sneaked them in. We made Baltimore part of Canada that year, but I think in 2019 was the first year that like the vision of the festival kind of started to develop.
What is that vision?
I would say representing the underrepresented. That's kind of like our tagline, but I think that's comes really close to like what we want to do, like represent those artists who don't generally get the attention or are simply ignored. Like we have to keep in mind that a big part of the music industry is not connected to the music industry. Then we're talking about Africa, the Middle East, Asia, because of language issues, because of simply not having the right infrastructure, and because of the media monoculture that has been happening over the last 10, 15 years in a rapid speed. And I think noticing that and seeing so many festival lineups becoming so similar to each other, we felt like, okay, we can do something else. We can do something different. And like we're on this planet with, depends how you count, 196, 206 countries. But we generally hear from 3 or 4 countries maximum, the artists coming from there. And yeah, so that was kind of a thing for us that we wanted to change. We're not a world music festival. That's the most important thing. I think that we always mix certain kind of genres with each other and never have like one room with only African music, or that is what still made it a pop music festival. So we still present it as a pop music festival, but the content we present is not per se considered pop music. And I think in that way, like we have been managed to grow quite rapidly. And then in 2014, we had a new venue because we moved from the old Tivoli. The festival used to be part of Tivoli, the venue. And Tivoli merged together with Vredenburg, which was the classical music venue in town. And we got this massive new building in town with 6 rooms, etc. So in that year, our festival tripled in size immediately. Which was great. It's an amazing venue to have as a festival hub, simply because you can do 40 shows a night easily in that venue because you have so many venues and it can be any genre. So that kind of definitely gave us like almost a trademark because a lot of people just hang out in that venue because it's so comfortable. But yeah, 2007 we started, was one venue. 2 stages, 1 official stage and 1 stage kind of built on the floor. 10 bands, that was it. The lineup was great at that point, I think. If you look back, like Black Mountain, Mastercraft, Caribou, like all bands which became quite big afterwards. But that year definitely weren't, because I don't think we sold many tickets.
How important is, because you just now showed that you are proud of the bands that became bigger, and that's something that kind of describes like us who in a way is it very important for you to discover new bands and to become the introduction or for those bands to a wider audience?
Yeah, it's great if bands become bigger afterwards, but if that's because of Legacy or not, like I don't really care about it. I think the most important thing is just to give people content and program that is just really exciting. And it's not necessarily the bands that became big that were my favorite shows. Like there's also Alanis Obom Sabin or Linda Sharrock or something like that. Those things really got me, and that's amazing. But yeah, like I think because I was an agent back in the day, I have an artist mindset. So, and I think that's the big thing. And I'm probably also part of the success of the festival is that the artist is always number one. I will never use an artist for my own promotion. That's rule number 1. We are there as a facilitating hub for the artists to make the live and the touring and the profile of the artist better. Like that's my goal. Like we're pretty much a service organization in that. Instead of that, it's not about our own ego. Like I think Legacy always communicates under Legacy. We never communicate with our own names per se. Mainly just because the artists and the people who are making the content, those are the ones who should be credited, and not it's great that we're doing well, but it's not about that. I think it's more that we can give people something which otherwise might not happen. So I think that's it.
And this is a question that you've probably got so many times that you have a standard answer for it. We get it a lot as well because our festival is called Monkey Week, and everyone's like, "Why are you called Monkey Week?" And actually, I don't have an answer for that because I didn't put the name. But where does Le Guess Who as a name come from? Why that kind of name for a festival in Holland?
Because we started as a all Canadian music festival. Then eventually you're gonna sit at home, like I was sitting with Joe at his house, like eating something, and then we're just going through records and to titles. Like you just try to make a list of names of like, oh, how can we call this thing? And eventually we discovered that the Guess Who, the band who wrote American Woman, was actually also a Canadian band, which is kind of interesting because they made a song called American Woman. So everyone probably would think like, oh, they're American. And I think that, and then my colleague at Belmont, Bas, was actually the one who said like, oh, you should put Le before it because they speak French in Canada. And that was kind of like a practical joke. And it's, you need to get used to it for a few years. But as with everything, like if you use it over and over and over and over again, then people get used to it. So eventually the question mark behind it was, I think, the best move, like to have a question mark, because that became kind of our logo for everything. And that give us a lot of freedom as well, because the question mark is, that's what we deal with. We deal with content that might be a question mark for people, or generally is a question mark. So.
And you have a vast, sorry?
No, so the Guess Who, American Woman is...
okay. That's a simple answer. So you have a very vast array of genres and different kinds of artists. So I wonder how many people are in charge of the bookings, because you need to have people who are knowledgeable in many different genres, don't you?
The booking team is quite small. That's me and Jacob. So we're with the two of us putting the program together.
So how much time do you spend searching for new music?
All the
on
time.
A regular day, all the time.
Yeah, like you wake up and like you always like, I'm always hungry for new music. I have to say, I have discovered way more new music now since Corona, which was a blessing because you actually have time just to listen to music. But I think we're always hungry for new stuff. Like I think also the pressure comes also with it, because every year you kind of want to present the best lineup again. So you want to be unique, and it's like we collaborate with partners, obviously. So there's also like the curators bring in a lot of knowledge. So every year we work with 5 till 7 different curators who curate a program. That since we started with that in 2012 or 13, it was with Ty Segal. It was the first time actually. It brought a lot of depth in there, and I think like once Sono and Swans started to curate, definitely moved the whole shift of the program into a different kind of direction, and I thought that was great. And I think now we're even at the point that we're actually excited when bands come up with list where we don't know anything about. Like for example, last year we worked with Iris van Herpen, which is a Dutch fashion designer, as a musical curator, and half of their list I was not familiar with at that point, but or I didn't even like at the beginning. But then a half year later, you start to understand, and I think that was kind of a mind opener for us as well. It's not.
So you keep curators full freedom.
100% freedom, yes, yeah, as long as I can pay it.
Yeah. So they come up with a wish list, and then of course you try, as long as you can pay it, and you try to.
Yeah, the best ones are the ones with a long as possible wish list, because of course we have like past editions of the festival, and like there's always overlap between artists of bands that you already had the year before or whatever. So I try to like not double up, but like bands can return to the festival. I have no issue with that. I think actually it's great. But like the longer the wish list from the curators, the deeper we can go into the program and dig. Like I generally ask them, like try to have an unspoken like red line or red thread through your program, like a theme or something that you hold on to, because that kind of binds the whole curated program. Some do it, some don't. But like also the program is not happening just in one venue for one curator. It's mixed through each other because we use about 35 different venues. So it's mixed, and that way also audience who might not be a fan of one specific curator might end up going to a concert of that curator. So yeah, like and we collaborate with like Festival of the Early Music here, which focus on early music, with Spring Festival, which is a contemporary dance festival. So like of the input we don't have, we generally get it from external partners. But still 15 years in, like I was talking with Jacob, my colleague, like last week about this, and it's just like, wow, there's still a lot of genres of music we don't know about. And I think like for us, that's just great because that means that we're not done yet.
And I guess you have a very faithful following when people are very open to new experiences and they want to go to the festival to discover new forms of music and new genres. There's one thing about the curators I wanted to ask: is there any curators that you have chased or that you wanted to have and they decided or declined?
Yeah, many.
Many.
No, I have my personal dream. Like Erykah Badu would be something I would be absolutely blessed with to work with her, because I think that would be the most psychedelic weird ass could be the most psychedelic weird ass curation. I reached out to Quentin Tarantino at some point. That really didn't get there. Yeah, there's always many, like Ryuichi Sakamoto just got confirmed for Holland Festival, so we decided like to move that maybe to a later time. But yeah, the wish list is endless, and every year you discover new ones. I think also like when we moved to start working with not only musicians as artists, so like last year with Iris van Herpen, for example, or the year before with Asia Argento, then you get a whole new range of inputs. You can start like Ta-Nehisi Coates, for example, would be a wish list curator for me, the writer from the States, because I think he's a genius in how he writes and what he talks about. But that could be an interesting, like, I'm not sure about his musical taste, but that could be an interesting curator.
Okay. So sometimes you approach people who probably don't even know about the festival.
I think that happens. Yeah. Like there's definitely people I have approached, but then like you sent them information. I've been in touch with Solange. We were very close, but then they decided not to tour. There's always wish lists and people you want to have, and I like ideally we want to expand it with the curators as well. Like I would say every year there's always one or two curators which I consider friends of the festival, which I invite. So they're like, for example, More Mother used to be a performer at the festival and became a curator.
I'm not sure. Okay, you're back.
Okay.
Okay, you were saying every year there's a few curators that you consider friends of the festival.
Yes, like there's always a few people, like for example, More Mother or The Book or Soons, like or Jerusalem in My Heart. They all have played the festival before they became a curator. So at some point, like it was always like who gave the most intense performance, and then we asked those people for the next year to be a curator. So More Mother was one of them. The Book, Kevin Martin was the other one, and yeah, like I'm always open. It's just about the total package of like every curator together. Like what can they bring together for like the whole festival? Like I love it because every year I get inputs and it's just like I literally have never heard. Like Midori Takada is going to be one of our curators for next year. Yeah, her input is amazing because she's based in Japan. She's based in the contemporary music scene, but not the stuff we know about here in Europe because half of it has never toured here. That stuff I'm interested in because that's stuff you want to show to the audience to have some unique content. And are they known? Yeah, one of them is the jazz musician from Japan, but unknown in Europe, for example. Like it's, and I think those things are very, very interesting for me to work with.
And what percentage of the lineup is chosen by you and Jacob, and what percentage by the curators?
I would say 60% for the curators, 40% for us, roughly. Depends a little bit. Like sometimes curators, like last year, Kevin Martin, the Berg was super active. So I think he had got a curation of 21 artists, where normally the curation is between 10 and 15 artists. But yeah, about 40% of the festival is what we book ourselves, and then 60% is curated content.
Out of how many acts in the weekend?
I haven't counted them, but I think last year around 175.
Okay.
Something like that.
And how many people work at the La Guess Who, apart from the booking, apart from you, Jacob? And what's the size? I don't mean during the actual festival, but like a month before. I mean, during the actual festival, of course, there's crew and door and all that. I can imagine.
During the festival,
I mean the core.
100 people, but before the festival and just like the main people at the office, we have Johan, my partner, who is mainly like the business director of the festival. Then Anna Marleen, who is assisting Johan in most of the job. She does the finance as well, and she's kind of like we call it zakelijk leider. I don't know how to translate it in English. Barry is head of promotion. There's 4. Jacob next to me is 5. Then I have like a part-time person called Hanan who focus on the educational programs we do with schools. And then most of them are freelance people, which we hire in just for the period of time. So our producer for the festival, Carly, like she's hired in, but like she works roughly 2 days a week, I would say. Mm-hmm. But most of the year we're like with 4 or 5 people in the office.
Full time, 4 or 5 full time. You work only for the festival all year long.
Yeah, like I have other gigs as well that I still book bands, and I have a couple other festivals I'm involved in. But yeah, I guess it was technically on paper a full-time job.
That was another question I wanted to talk about, because you also book another festival or event in Italy. Mm-hmm. How did that come up, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, in Italy is a festival called Beaches Brew. We started that when I was still an agent at Belmont Bookings in Amsterdam, and we booked a lot of bands at that point at Primavera. Every year we had like 5 to 8 bands play Primavera, but when Primavera Porto started, we always had a gap of a week in between the tour. And it's just like, okay, how can we fill this up in a nice way for our artists? And at that point, it was like Damien Jurado or those kind of artists. And it's like, how can we do it? Like, can we hang out on the beach somewhere? And then that's kind of how this thing came together. And so at the beginning, it was the Belmont organization, like who dealt, like it was a lot of their roster at the lineup, and then eventually I became the main booker for the festival together with Chris Angelini, and that way we moved out of like our own roster a little bit and to external stuff. And yeah, and it's free entrance, it's on the beach, so it's nothing starts before 5 p.m. in the evening, so you have dinner and then the show starts, so you won't miss a single gig. It's more like we don't make money on it, but it's a great holiday to have with each other.
Sounds great. So it's on weekdays in between both Primaveras.
Yeah. So we start on Mondays. Monday we do it in the harbor. We just more like to support the local businesses there so that they have some extra income. And then Tuesday till Thursday we're on the beach, and then Friday Primavera Porto starts.
It's like a great plan. We have one question from Algo Records in Chile, so they must have woke up very early to follow this. Mm-hmm. They ask, is there any way we can present and show artists at the festival? What is the best way for anyone who wants to pitch artists?
Anyone, definitely email me or email the info address, send a link and send some information. Like I cannot make any commitments, but like Chile, awesome. I'm always interested hearing what's from there. Like one of my favorite hip hop acts is actually from Chile, Maquisa, from back in the day. So I'm always interested in hearing what's out there in Chile. And so yeah, definitely reach out and maybe just mention that you asked the question here, so then I remember. Generally, we email back everyone who emails us. So I would say just email with suggestions, not too long emails. Preferably short, simple, YouTube links. That's enough. Then we're in touch. It's quite easy.
Great. talking about Chile and other places, I believe there's over half of the attendants at Look at Who comes from other countries other than Holland, and some of them come from China or Japan or Australia.
Mhm.
Um, are you do you work with any tourism institutions or any government institutions that value that mm, uh, draw that you have from people from abroad, or do you just do that
We
independently
should.
and
We
no
should.
one?
It's
You
it's
should actually, you know.
it's always on our to-do list, but for some reason we never really like. We have so much other stuff to do that we're never really like make the time like to write an email or to connect with tourism boards or the embassies or etc. Um,
Like we have a panel this week about music cities,
okay.
and it's about how music should collaborate with local institutions in turning your city a better place.
Hmm.
And that means bringing money as you do, because you bring people from outside and from abroad, and also to make the city a more habitable place and enriching the culture
Yeah.
of the city, which is something that you definitely do. So I suppose that panel would be interesting in that sense. But with you, I read an interview where you said that Utrecht is like Amsterdam without the bullshit. uh,
Yeah, yeah, I said that.
yeah, it's on paper. Do you think that Le Guess Who could have happened in a different town other than Utrecht?
I do think so, yeah. But the infrastructure we had, like, of course, like we lived here, and there's a lot of reasons why it started here. I don't think the festival would necessarily work in really big cities, simply because then the big city takes over, and then you get snowed under just with all the other stuff happening. The thing in Utrecht is like once it happens, that's the thing that's happening in the city. It's quite small. The city, it's walkable. It's 350,000 people, like, and it's a relatively tiny city center. And I think that kind of makes it an ideal festival grounds because you can walk from venue to venue. Like in Amsterdam, you would still have to take Ubers to go from certain venues, or like in New York, like I love CMJ and those kind of events, but like 90% of the time I'm in an Uber and 10% I'm watching a show. And I think for a festival like Le Guess Who, where you have a lot of stuff that people don't know on the program, you don't want to make the travel and the logistics too difficult because then people will decide not to go. And I think once it's that close, like then it's easier. Like, oh, let's just walk into this venue, see what's happening there. Like, oh, well, this surprises me. This, like, I'm going to stay here or whatever. And that would not happen that quickly when a venue, when a city is too bigger and you actually have to make a lot of efforts to get there. So but by now, like the festival is so embedded in Utrecht in every way, from like local businesses to the venues to the people working with us, that like it's going to be hard to transfer this to another city as it is right now. But I do think it can work in other cities, and we've been talking like with people who have reached out at some point, like, "Are you interested in doing a Guess Who here?" I'm always interested in those conversations, but it has to make sense. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to hurt the main festival here, then I don't see a reason to expand just for the sake of expanding or my own ego. But
Yeah.
if like, yeah, there are places I would love to go to, but then it's like places like Tanzania or maybe even like Hong Kong or like places which are further away removed from where we have our audience and our people right now. And ideally also where we can build up. I think the social character of the festival is important for us, how we can build up something in the city and like make the city a better place, at least for 4 days. So
And you have, as you said, a very strong relationship with the local venues. There is this thing about some people think that festivals are opposed to venues because they
sorry,
change. Some
can you
people some people would think that festivals are opposed to venues, like they are taking business out of venues because of the exclusivities and all that sort of thing. But your festival is actually different in that I think you are collaborating with them. Do you have any kind of exclusivities, for example, with your artists that may?
not much. it's not my favorite thing. Exclusivity is also like, we are a venue festival, so we're not like a big summer festival. I think exclusivity is only for the ego. Generally, it's something to push fees up. It is something to make something just for yourself, and not like the stuff we present. A lot of artists, like if I would put on a regular show, I would sell 15 tickets. At my festival, I have 400 people in the room for that same band. So I think in that way, I'm happy always when there's more shows happening around it as well, especially for the smaller bands, and they need it. They need the money, and then so like I'm definitely not going to say like you cannot play here. Like if I invest in something and I pay for all the flights and the whole logistics and all that kind of stuff, yes, like I do demand some kind of exclusivity, but I will never do European exclusivity. I think that's fucking bullshit. So yeah, like I'm not a huge fan of exclusivity per se. Sometimes you have to do it because if you spend a lot of money on something, then there's no reason that's like there's also a show happening 25 minutes further in Amsterdam, for example. But if that show is happening in Berlin, like, yeah, like for those few people who are not coming to the festival from Berlin, because that show is also happening in their own town, I think it's a weak spot if I would make myself nervous about that.
And how do you find the bands as well of listening to the YouTube links that people from Chile will send you? Do you travel a lot, especially because you mentioned CNJ, which doesn't happen anymore, but you probably go to other showcase festivals and check bands there? You don't?
Yeah. I do. I used to travel a lot pre-corona. I think.
We all, yeah.
Yeah. It's also like you don't have to travel yourself all the time. I think there's also a lot of like our extended family, as I call them, like people who work for the festival or who have a connection with the festival, inform you. Like I think people kind of know what the festival is about, so we get a lot of recommendation from, hey, you should check out this one. This is something really interesting. And like, yeah, when I get something sent from Chile, then generally I'll listen to the music. I try to find some live video just to get an idea what is the live situation. And if I'm excited, then I will try to make it possible. Like we used to do more back in the day also, that we organized tours for bands which couldn't come over on like the budget we have. But for example, I pay them $1,000 and their costs are $1,500. Then we would see if we can find like a few extra gigs around it so that the band can go home with money, that it's not going to cost me a fortune, and that it's not just a one-off. But yeah, I'm always generally like Jacob, me, Johan, everyone on the team is always looking for music. So we kind of inform each other a lot of like, hey, listen to this, listen to that. I think the biggest issue is mainly that a lot of music, especially from the Middle East and Asia, doesn't really arrive through our systems, Spotify, whatever, like it's geo-blocked or whatever is happening. So that takes more time and energy. But I think, yeah, that's just something you build up over the years.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I wonder, how do you find especially the acts from Asia, Middle East, from Africa? Is that also through tips from people, or digging on Bandcamp, or do you have subscriptions to the DSPs that they use, for example, in Africa, like Boomplay? Or
No, but I have friends there. The team has friends there, like ex-curators inform us about it. Like we work with people like Mazaf. That's something we like kind of started to collaborate with more. Like we talk with like labels like Nyege Nyege, what's going on there. So there are things there, but there's still a lot to be discovered always. So like you always have. Like we always will miss out on something and then discover it later, but it's not a competition to who finds it first. It's just like, does it fit the whole context of the programming?
And have you had any complicated issues with visas?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
Did they end up in cancellations, or it's just that you had a hard time to get the bands there, but they finally...
We managed to get everyone into the festival. Last year we had with Ustad Sami. which was partly because of his own schedule and when he was available to go to the visa office, but also that visas in the last couple of years have been kind of transferred to VFS Global, like this British corporate company of commercial company, so not a government institution, which handles the visas, which is another layer in between, which makes communication less and less possible to get stuff quickly done. Normally you call the embassy and you build up a relationship with the ambassador, and then you can get the visa sorted a little bit quicker. Now there's like this thing in between for outsourcing, which I think is a very terrible situation around the world, especially that the countries which already had a difficult situation to get a visa are even in a more difficult situation to get a visa. And I think that's almost criminal in my opinion, like how that you know that like a lot of countries don't have a visa office, so and those people don't have the money or the situation to travel like to 2 countries further just to get their visa, for example. So yes, like I had a lot of visa issues. Generally we got them solved, luckily, but yeah, it sometimes costs extra money. It's a lot of hassle. I also understand why it's a lot of hassle. Like countries have to want to keep everything safe and don't have people fly around. You don't want to have fly arounds, but I think there's definitely room for improvement on the visa issues for artists, especially for artists, I would say, because like with Ustad Sami, the problem was as well, he's from Karachi, Pakistan in the south. So that's close to the Afghani border. And just that doesn't make it easier, because suddenly everyone is considered a criminal at first. Ustad was born pre-separation from India, so he doesn't have a last name in his passport. Doesn't make things easier. Like, so there's all these little things that don't make things easier for a lot of people to get visas. But I have to say, like, for example, when Trump came into power and he put in the, what was it called, the Muslim ban, I think they called it. The first thing we did here in the office was like, oh, let's see which bans are from Yemen, which bans are from those places he's banning, just to make a statement and to bring them over. And that's kind of like activated us even more, like looking into those kind of countries, because the people haven't done anything wrong. It's just like a fucking person who makes an opinion that he just blames all of them. And I think for us as a cultural organization, we feel the need to then represent those people, because those are obviously underrepresented people or unrepresented people even. Then it's our task to make sure that these people can come over and that we build up something for them.
The thing is that if you went to Yemen to find bans, if you traveled there, then you would be banned to travel to the US yourself.
Yeah.
And how do you think Brexit is going to affect touring Europe for bands and for UK bands coming to your festival? Because you always have a bunch of them, of course.
Yeah, slowly, like last week, there was like some more info coming available about like what UK bands need to do. Like for them, it's going to be horrible, because we have 26, 27 countries in EU. Everyone has its own rules. All the countries decide themselves on the visas if they give the visas. So like we have to Schengen, luckily. So that makes things slightly easier. But yeah, no, it's going to be a disaster for a lot of bands, especially for the smaller ones who don't have the money, because there's going to be extra costs being involved just to get the visas. For bigger bands, it's going to be fine, I'm sure. For the smaller bands, I can see that they won't be able to make a quick tour through Europe if they don't have any budgets there. So that's difficult. For Guess Who, I don't see too much of an problem, because we generally don't book too many British bands anyway, and if we miss out a year on them, it's not the biggest disaster, let's say it like that. For touring bands and like how borders are going to close, like I think this is a very interesting time in that way. Like, where are we going with this, and are we all going to go sit behind our borders and pretend that every country is really amazing and not listen to the others, or do we really learn from what we actually have built up and keep things open and start communicating with each other? Like, things are going to change for sure. Costs are going to increase, but that's all a little bit guessing, I guess, what's going to happen. But
Well,
for
it also depends on the pandemic and how people can travel, and if they feel it's safe to travel, and if there are airlines that can have cheap flights anymore after many of them are closing or going bankrupt.
yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
I
it's
think
going to be interesting.
the, the good thing is like it will become hopefully more sustainable eventually, the touring, because there will be less one-off flying. People will think a little bit harder of like, okay, let's make this like a 2-week tour and travel everything by train or through the, over ground. Like, so I think that's a very positive development, that the touring is less opportunistic but more how do you say it, like more
Or
thoughtful,
planned.
more
Yeah.
planned. But yeah, it's difficult because like there's a lot of people involved in this industry and a lot of people dependent on it, and a lot of people who have to start changing their mindsets for a new future. It's not going to be the old future
Yeah.
anymore ever, which might not be a bad thing.
Exactly. That can be a good thing. I mean, change is good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the past, though. Let's talk about the. I want you to explain us does it work with Le Mini Who and also with the Lombok Festival, which are two ways in which you collaborate with emerging artists, with the local scene, and yeah, I wanted to go into that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Laminihu, we started, I don't know, 10 years ago, probably, mainly as a, a promotional thing for the festival itself, because we were always happening behind closed doors and we just wanted to make some noise. So that was kind of how Laminihu started. Let's do it in the coffee bars and like the shops, because those are open during the day. And just let's make some noise there. That was kind of like the first edition of Laminihu, and that eventually kind of became a festival for mainly Dutch underground music. But for the
That's
local,
always free entrance.
it's free entrance. Yes, it's for everyone. That was more just because we're not putting on easy content per se at the festival. So there's a lot of people who are not taking the step to or take the risk like to join Legasu, and this was kind of like the first step in model for them, like to get some Legasu vibes going, and if they like it, then they might buy a ticket next year. That was kind of the idea at the first Laminihu. Eventually it turned more to a festival which is done with the local organizations and companies who are based there, and for a lot of them, like it's like generally the best bar or the best turnaround they got that year, because we have so many people walking around, buying stuff, being there, hanging out, etc. Lombok Festival had kind of a different approach, because Lamini was still quite top-down program, because it's programmed by us, by ourselves, by the festival. Lombok is completely bottom-up, is programmed by the local people, and that's an area which is heavy gentrifying at the moment, and like it becomes very hip and yuppies, etc., etc. But it's originally from like the Moroccan and the Turkish population in the city. And they brought the vibe into that thing, and once we start to see that shift of like gentrification, we were like, okay, we need to do something that honors the people who actually live there. So we started to make music of a program, music and content with them, started to work together with the mosque on programming, so that they opened their doors for other people to see what is this, just to make a connection between people, and that in combination with an international audience, which we have that weekend, opens up a lot of minds of like, oh, this is how it is. And so Lombok is more like a social thing than that the programming is per se that important for us personally, because it's like it's outsourced in a way. From locals put on the acts, and that only happens one day a week. Lamini, who now is 3 days, I think, in the festival, spread over 3 days.
So let's go back to the present and the future. What's your balance, your sum up of this year's festival?
Yeah, this year was I really enjoyed it, and I saw a lot of possibilities. I don't think it was perfect, but in the end, we had more countries tuning in than that we normally have at our festival. I think the end result was 119 or 120 countries, 15,000 people tuning in to the channel. I was never a fan of online stuff. I really like the analog idea and like the human-to-human kind of connection. But I think in the new world we're moving into, like an online situation is kind of unavoidable. And I definitely saw a lot of opportunities of like how I can broaden the spectrum of the festival by using the online TV channel, the content we bring out. Like we did this program called Reports from Other Continents, where we just ask people, which we didn't even know, in Colombia, Rwanda, Congo, whatever, to make 5-minute short documentaries about something related to music, culture, or art. And for the rest, it was 100% free. It was like there was no editorial board afterwards saying this is not good. It was just becoming a platform. And I think that definitely has some potential to become an online and an offline scenario.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Like that's it's hard to say in a year that's half of the industry is crippling, but I'm excited about the chaos. I'm excited about the constant need to think differently and to adapt constantly. And I think that brings us as a festival further eventually and closer to what we actually really want to be. So the festival itself hopefully is going to be as it always was, because that's was great. So I really hope that people can travel and that we will get an international audience in and that it can stay a similar size as we had. But if it's going to become a combination or like a hybrid version or something I don't even know about, I'm more than open for that as well. Like, yeah, I'm excited.
It's something like we may say that LGW TV is probably here to stay, and in one way or another. Would you do things throughout the year or just on the festival days?
Yeah, like I'm now 1.5 day after I finished the TV channel, so like this is the moment that there's a lot of thoughts going on of like, oh, this could have been better, that like this is potential. So that's something we will do over the next couple of weeks, that we'll come up with a plan for 21. But yeah, I think there will be more content happening online. In which way, I don't know yet. It has to be effective also for the artists who participated, and like it has to benefit them, in my opinion. But yeah, I like as who TV is here to stay in that way, that I do see potential of running this. If I'm going to do it another 64 hours nonstop, I'm not sure if that's the way to do it. But on the other hand, because of that, we managed to get almost 120 countries to tune in to the channel. And so yeah, like that's if anyone out there, I cannot see anyone, but like if anyone out there has watched the TV channel and has comments, very open for that as well. Like I just want to make it better and more worthwhile.
So, look, Guess Who 2020 is over. You are going to start now to prepare 2021. Of course, you need to think of different scenarios because no one knows what's going to happen next year by this time of the year. But what's more or less, if it was a normal year, what would be the process now? How do you choose the curators? How do you prepare the timeline until next November? What's the process from now until the next edition?
Yeah, in a normal edition, like we kind of start working on the first curators just before the festival happens. So like September, October, we start to talk with the curators because it's generally a long process just to get the curational programs together. And then by the end of May, I would have booked 75% of the festival. And then the last 25% comes over the summer, and generally at the beginning of September, that part is done.
You keep some slots open just in case something shows up that you are very interested in, or
yeah, I don't have a set number of slots, so I can you can always move the time schedule a little bit and make a slot if you really want to show something. So yeah, like we're generally very slow bookers compared to a lot of other festivals. Like I think last year I still booked 2 bands 2 weeks before the festival, just because it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to stay urgent. On the other hand, you also want to create a certain organizational rest within the organization by not changing things too last minute. But I think that the combination of those is perfect. It keeps things urgent. It keeps things relevant up till that point. Like last year, Ustad Sami, up till like he got the visa the morning that he was going to fly.
Oh.
So that one was definitely something that I was looking for. Like, okay, what replacement can I put in there? Because I had him at a prime slot, that kind of stuff. I think next year is going to be much more of that. I think a lot of agents might confirm a tour, which might not happen. And it's just because, yeah, what can they do now? Let's just confirm it and see what happens. So next year we have to be extremely flexible. But I think like for us, we were kind of in like a 3-4 step grade now, and then we're going to evaluate of like, hey, how does this look like? We're in close contact with like a lot of government institutions. So like once there is the feeling like, hey, the fall doesn't look good, or the virus isn't under control or whatever, then we'll adjust to that. But for now, like I'm just working on November 21, that there is going to be a festival, and that it's going to be hopefully a festival in the most full form. But the full form won't be booked till the middle of September next year.
Okay, but you are already contacting the curators for next year.
Yeah. Like for next year, of course, we had curators set up for this year. So those have been moved, and then Midori Takada has been added, and one more curator will be added to the beginning of next year.
Okay, I'm very much looking forward to next year's edition, and I wish I can be there and we can see each other in the physical form.
Also hoping in Sevilla today in the good weather in Spain, but it's not happening. So.
Yeah, and you have to come to Seville to enjoy Monkey Week in its full form. So thank you very much, Bob. It's been very interesting. Again, I want to express on behalf of the whole team here at Monkey Week how much we look up to the Guess Who, and your bookings is one of our favorite lineups every year, and we talk about it all the time in the office. And we actually, you are our curators in a way, because we don't dig that deep into a lot of genres, but we discover a lot of acts that we really like. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy your holidays after the hard work. Congratulations on a different but successful edition of the Guess Who, and see you very soon. And to everybody else, we close for now, and we'll be back from 5 p.m. It will be hybrid between Spanish and it will be all in Spanish today. Tomorrow we will have some English conferences in the afternoon, but today from 5 p.m. until 2 a.m. we will be here live. It will be a TV broadcast, kind of a talk show. I just say come in and watch, and you'll see a lot of great bands and myself and 2 other friends doing the monkey and doing stupid things on camera. Thank you, Bob. Thanks, everyone. See you at 5.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.